What if even the most fortified military bases could be shattered in an instant? Imagine this. A single, meticulously targeted missile strike by Russian forces obliterates a Ukrainian military training center in Chernihiv. This was no ordinary attack. It was a precise assault deep in the rear, targeting a facility where Ukrainian troops, many trained by NATO instructors, were preparing for future missions with Western-supplied weapons. The outcome was devastating. In mere moments, the facility was reduced to ruins. Ukrainian commanders and NATO leaders alike were left reeling, not only by the sheer destruction, but by the chilling message: nowhere, not even the rear, is immune from modern warfare. The confidence that NATO's training programs and weapon stockpiles could remain safe far from the front lines was shattered. What made this attack different, and truly terrifying, was the use of real-time intelligence, advanced precision, and flawless timing. In a single strike, Russia exposed a vulnerability that many in the West had quietly ignored. The rules of engagement shifted overnight. Secure zones no longer exist. Precision warfare now has the power to reach everywhere, forcing a reckoning with grim new realities. If these lessons go unheeded, we risk falling behind, misjudging threats, and eroding the strategic advantage that ensures future security. Our old assumptions about safety, possibility, and control are outdated, and the price for failing to adapt could be enormous. This attack did not just change military calculations, it rattled alliances and forced urgent questions about the future. To understand the full impact, we need to look at how it unfolded, and what it means for everyone involved. This was no ordinary base. It was the nerve center of Ukraine's elite forces. The Chernihiv training center occupied a critical crossroads in Ukraine's defense. Here, sprawling training grounds merged with weapons depots and command posts, creating a linchpin for advanced operations and rapid coordination. Unlike typical military camps, this facility hosted foreign instructors, including seasoned NATO specialists. These experts delivered hands-on guidance with complex Western arms, elevating the center's significance far above a simple boot camp. Yet training was only part of its mission. The site doubled as a logistics hub, receiving steady shipments of weapons and equipment. Reinforced warehouses and encrypted communications turned it into the backbone of supply and planning for Ukrainian forces. Russian intelligence grasped the stakes. Layered surveillance, drones, satellites, radio intercepts, and human informants worked ceaselessly to uncover the center's true function. Every convoy, every foreign advisor's arrival, was tracked and scrutinized. Once Russian analysts confirmed the gathering of advanced weaponry, elite troops, and Western trainers, the target's value skyrocketed. This compound became a symbol: NATO-trained troops, cutting-edge technology, and a direct challenge to any adversary. The potential loss was staggering. Destroying such a hub would cripple command, logistics, and morale, forcing Ukraine's partners to reconsider their support. But a single question burned: how did Russia pierce this fortress of secrecy and deliver such a catastrophic strike? To answer that, we must retrace the chain of intelligence, infiltration, and deception that set the stage for disaster. The answer begins long before the missiles launched. Precision in warfare is not simply about finding a mark. It means seizing control of the entire battlefield, often before anyone realizes the fight has begun. This strike began long before the missiles launched. Russian forces orchestrated a web of intelligence gathering: real-time drone feeds, high-resolution satellite images, intercepted radio chatter, and ground-level informant reports. Each thread of data was meticulously verified, revealing the base's true purpose and mapping the rhythms of daily life inside the training center. One critical pattern emerged from this surveillance. Every morning, nearly all personnel, soldiers and their commanders, gathered in a single open area for assembly. This routine, so ordinary and predictable, exposed the heart of the base at its most vulnerable moment. Armed with this knowledge, Russian planners shaped an attack that left little to chance. Multiple Iskander missile batteries were concealed at separate launch sites, spaced miles apart. The strategy: unleash a perfectly coordinated salvo, striking the command post, ammunition stores, and troop formations at the exact same instant. The goal was not just destruction, but paralyzing confusion. Secrecy was enforced at every level. Only a handful of high-ranking officers knew when the assault would begin. Most Russian personnel, and every Ukrainian on base, remained in the dark, oblivious to the disaster approaching. Dawn broke over Chernihiv, and the training center moved through its routine. Missiles were armed, drones circled overhead, streaming live images back to Russian command. As the largest crowd of troops assembled, the launch order came. In near silence, Iskander missiles lifted from their launchers and sliced through the sky. The first warhead struck the headquarters, erasing it in a single blast. Almost at once, other missiles hit vehicle hangars and ammunition bunkers. The explosions fed on themselves. Munitions and fuel erupted, fanning a rolling chain reaction. Drones captured the aftermath. Soldiers running in all directions, communications cut, fireballs consuming equipment. The shock was total. No one could organize a rescue. Any attempt risked igniting new explosions. The base's defenses and its sense of safety were gone in seconds. The lesson was chillingly clear. With preparation and precision, even the deepest rear areas can be shattered in a moment. Nowhere is truly safe when the strike is invisible until it lands. As the smoke rose over Chernihiv, Ukrainian and Western leaders scrambled to assess the damage and rethink their own vulnerabilities. The attack's consequences would ripple far beyond the blast zone. One missile volley, hundreds of lives lost in seconds. A pillar of Ukraine's defense splintered overnight. The Chernihiv strike's consequences struck with the force of a hammer blow. The obliteration of the training center meant more than just a tally of casualties. It erased decades of battlefield experience. Among the fallen were not only Ukrainian veterans, but also foreign advisors, the very people who had been forging Ukraine's next generation of fighters. Their loss created a vacuum of expertise that no crash course could fill. Worse still, the explosion annihilated colossal reserves of Western-supplied ammunition and sophisticated weaponry. These caches were the result of months of clandestine deliveries and logistical acrobatics, each shell and missile earmarked for future offensives or to shore up strategic reserves. In the span of minutes, entire battalions found themselves stripped of the tools they needed for planned operations, their futures now uncertain. Panic spread. Command networks went dark as communications hubs were flattened, and a chain reaction of secondary blasts left the zone a no-man's land. For hours, Ukrainian commanders could only guess at the scale of the disaster, unable to coordinate a response or even account for survivors. Within moments, raw video and images flooded the internet. Scorched vehicles, collapsed shelters, plumes of black smoke rising for miles. The destruction was undeniable. The nerve center of a crucial military network had vanished. The psychological fallout was immediate. For Ukraine and its Western backers, the illusion of safe havens far from the front evaporated. Strategically, the paralysis was profound. Planned operations were suspended or canceled outright. Training for new recruits and special forces was thrown into chaos as surviving instructors and precious equipment had to be scattered and hidden. Commanders now faced impossible choices, forced to stretch thin resources and leave other sectors exposed to danger. Behind closed doors, Western officials wrestled with a new, chilling reality. The precision and effectiveness of the strike sent anxiety through every Allied capital. If such a heavily fortified site could be reduced to ruins, how secure were their own personnel and arms shipments? Suddenly, nowhere felt truly safe. The stakes could not be higher. The capacity to fight, reassure allies, and maintain international confidence all teetered on the edge. Every moment of hesitation risked more than just battlefield losses. It threatened to unravel the fragile coalition supporting Ukraine. As commanders scrambled to adapt, a new phase of the war began to take shape. The world watched, unsure what would come next, or how much further the balance might tip. Let's pause for a moment and draw a parallel from history. In the Second World War, Allied commanders believed that their rear supply depots in England were immune from German attacks. That illusion was shattered during the Blitz when, with the advent of the V-1 and V-2 rockets, London and other cities were suddenly within reach. In the same way, today's precision-guided missiles and advanced surveillance have erased the distance between front and rear, just as rocket technology did 80 years ago. Then, as now, the lesson was clear. Technological leaps can render old doctrines obsolete overnight. The myth of the safe rear line is shattered. Nowhere is truly untouchable any longer. Targets once considered secure, buried far from the front, can now be found, tracked, and struck by integrated intelligence and precision-guided missiles. With coordinated surveillance, real-time data, and rapid response weaponry, strategic depth can disappear in a single night. The psychological impact is profound. When a supposedly invulnerable site is wiped out, the effect reaches far beyond the immediate loss. Morale collapses. Trust evaporates, not just for soldiers on the ground, but for commanders and allies watching from distant capitals. The belief in a safe zone at the rear becomes a dangerous illusion. NATO's frantic efforts to relocate training missions and reroute supply lines after these attacks reveal how quickly a sanctuary can turn into a trap. The old logic, that distance equaled protection, is finished. Planners can no longer afford to be complacent. Adaptive defense and relentless multidimensional intelligence are now basic requirements. Consider the experience of the Yavoriv training base, which in the early days of the conflict was struck by a missile attack despite being located just a short drive from the Polish border. For decades, this base had hosted joint exercises and foreign advisors, its distance from active combat zones seen as its shield. Yet, with modern precision-guided weapons and real-time intelligence, even this facility became a target. The lesson played out again at Chernihiv, driving home that physical distance offers little sanctuary in an era of instantaneous strike capabilities. This moment sets a new standard. Future wars will not be decided just at the front. Key decisions and turning points may unfold far from the fighting, in places that once seemed immune. Every headquarters, warehouse, and training camp is now a possible front line. For leaders and strategists, the lesson is clear. They must question every assumption about security, secrecy, and reaction time. In an age of constant surveillance and precision strikes, secrets are almost impossible to keep, and responses must be nearly immediate. The old playbook is obsolete. Let's look at some practical steps that militaries and governments can take to adapt. First, disperse critical assets and avoid predictable routines. In the past, armies would rotate their command posts and keep supply depots small and mobile to avoid being targeted. This practice, which fell out of favor during the late 20th century, must now return. Second, invest heavily in electronic warfare and counter-surveillance measures. If the enemy relies on drones and satellites, disrupting their data can buy precious time. Third, train staff at all levels to respond to attacks on rear areas. No more assuming that only the front line is at risk. Finally, build redundancy into command, communications, and logistics. If one hub is destroyed, others must be ready to take its place instantly. These are not theoretical suggestions. They are concrete actions that can mean the difference between resilience and collapse when the unexpected strike comes. Unless defense strategies and mindsets evolve, nations and individuals risk devastating surprises and strategic catastrophes. The stakes are higher than ever, demanding vigilance, flexibility, and the courage to rewrite the rules of modern conflict. But how did the strike unfold, and what vulnerabilities did it expose in real time? The answer begins with a single missile launch and the scramble that followed. The battlefield is no longer a distant horizon. It has breached the walls of what was once considered safe. What will you do now that you have seen the front move closer? This strike was not just another operation. It exposed a harsh truth. Rear zones, once thought untouchable, are now vulnerable to precision attacks guided by real-time intelligence. The boundaries between front and rear have dissolved. Every command center, every supply line, every sanctuary is suddenly within reach. If you are tracking these changes, you are not simply reading tomorrow's news. You are deciphering the deeper forces that write it. The power to cripple an enemy's core, shatter morale, and disrupt entire command structures is no longer a theory. It is unfolding right now, and the shockwaves will extend far beyond the fields of Ukraine. Consider what this means for your own sense of security and the alliances you rely on. Warfare is evolving faster than most can adapt. Those who ignore these shifts may find themselves unprepared when the next strike lands closer to home. Let's imagine a scenario. A Western country, confident in the security of its rear bases, continues to run large, centralized training programs, believing its technological edge will provide enough warning. Suddenly, a swarm of enemy drones disables its surveillance radars, and within minutes, hypersonic missiles strike the heart of its logistics chain. The resulting chaos leaves troops stranded, supplies lost, and morale shattered. A replay of Chernihiv, but on a new front. This is not a distant possibility, but a credible scenario in the evolving landscape of warfare. We are witnessing a transformation in the very nature of war. Only those who question the old narratives and stay alert will have a chance to shape what comes next. Are you ready to challenge everything you thought you knew about the future of conflict? The world is watching. The next move belongs to those who have the courage to adapt, to innovate, and to accept that the rules have changed forever.